Sometimes a journey starts in a place you've never even visited. And if life is a journey, well then in some ways, mine began in St. Petersburg. No, I am not Russian. As far as I know, no one in my family is even a little bit Russian, as far as I know. But in 1901, Russian Emperor Nicholas II signed a conscription law, which meant that the Finnish army would become part of the Imperial Russian Army. Finns would be forced to serve in Russian units. And this is why a young Finnish man named Nestori Hankamäki and his wife Maria left their family farm and headed to America, where they eventually started a new farm in central Wisconsin. Their American-born son married a Scotch-Irish-Norwegian girl from a nearby farming town. They had children of their own, including my father. And so I owe my father's existence and my own to a Russian emperor's decision made 3/4 of a century before my birth. If Nestori and Maria Hankamäki had felt safe staying in Finland, I would never have been born. I had never considered how prominently St. Petersburg or Russian emperors fit into my life story until reading the book On the Way to Bethlehem by Rob Fuquay, who points out that Jesus' own life story began in Rome. How? Consider how Jesus' origin story begins according to Luke in the 2nd chapter. In those days, a decree went out from Emperor Augustus that all the world should be registered. This was the first registration and was taken while Quirinius was governor of Syria. All went to their own towns to be registered. This is the reason Jesus was born in Bethlehem and not Nazareth. Now, I don't know just how differently the story might have turned out had Joseph and Mary not been given the order to go to Joseph's family's home base of Bethlehem, but there was prophetic significance to Bethlehem being the birthplace of the Messiah, so it's probably a good thing he was born there. Although I cannot imagine the couple was thrilled to have to make that journey. They were poor, travel was expensive, and she was great with child. What a terrible time to travel. And all so that a census could be taken, which was pretty ominous. A census meant that more taxes were coming. Never great news for anyone, but especially not for people ruled by the Roman Empire. Because when the emperor started to dig deeper for more money, it usually meant that another military campaign was afoot, and that in itself would have an impact upon the subjects of the empire, as military campaigns always do, especially if it was launched against them, the people being occupied. The whole thing was bad news, certainly for Mary and Joseph. And yet, although they were powerless to resist the will of Caesar Augustus, there was one more powerful than the emperor himself, and that one was with them through the whole journey. Mary and Joseph trusted in God every step of the way, and that is how God was able to use them to bear a message of divine love through the tiny baby they would bring into the world, though they were far away from the home they knew and loved. What happened in Rome had a huge impact on a poor family who would never set foot in that grand city. But God has a way of turning even terrible situations into wonderful blessings when God's people hold on to hope. It's hard to remember when times are hard, when the journey is long and dark and the back aches and the feet are too tired to go much further. Did Mary have a donkey? The biblical writers, they don't say. We would like to think so, but the reality is that poor girl probably had to walk. What did she hope for as a Roman decree forced her to carry herself and her unborn child to an unfamiliar town 80 miles away from home? We have a clue in the song she sang earlier in her pregnancy when she visited her cousin Elizabeth. According to Luke's gospel, Mary sang about how God always came through for God's people, bringing down the powerful from their thrones, lifting up the lowly, filling the hungry with good things, sending the rich away empty. Did Mary sing that song as they walked, hoping that God would reverse their fortunes and bring down Caesar Augustus from his throne while lifting up the lowly people suffering under his unjust rule? If only it were that easy. If only God would act decisively, knock the tyrants off the thrones, fill up the hungry with good things, just like that. Poof, magic. Only God does not work like that. God works through people who refuse to become complacent, people who have the courage to sing songs of hope, even on hopelessly long journeys. God works through mothers who remember God's goodness and promise and teach their children their songs of hope. And to be perfectly clear, we are not talking about some dreamy, I hope God will just drop off a nice bundle of gifts like Santa. Hope, properly understood, is tenacious and gritty, like the song that an exhausted but determined teenage mom might sing as she marches toward Bethlehem, memorizing the lessons she will teach her child. Justice for the poor, food for the hungry, a song of hope that would become Jesus' own cradle song and the soundtrack of his life's work. Mary couldn't do as much to change the world as she would have liked, being a poor first-century Jewish girl living under Roman occupation and with a baby on the way. But she knew what agency she had. She could raise a child who would pursue justice and lead others in the cause. Would it be enough to change the world? Mary didn't know. She could only hope. And her hope, born of great suffering that originated in a place she would never see, Rome, would become the hope of many people who followed the teachings of her son, Jesus. And that hope would come first full circle when, years after Jesus' death, the Apostle Paul, who taught others how to live in Jesus' way, wrote a letter to a group of early Jesus followers in Rome, of all places. Listen to these words from Paul's letter to the Romans and imagine what these words might have meant to someone like Mary as she walked 80 miles to Bethlehem, pregnant and aching. From the 8th chapter, starting at verse 18. I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worth comparing with the glory about to be revealed to us. For the creation waits with eager longing for the revealing of the children of God. For the creation was subjected to futility, not of its own will, but by the will of the one who subjected it, in hope that the creation itself will be set free from its bondage to decay and will obtain the freedom of the glory of the children of God. We know that the whole creation has been groaning in labor pains until now, and not only the creation, but we ourselves who have the first fruits of the Spirit groan inwardly while we wait for adoption, the redemption of our bodies. For in hope we were saved. Now hope that is seen is not hope, but who hopes for what is seen? But if we hope for what we do not see, we wait for it with patience. Hoping for what we do not see, waiting for it with patience, like a mother waits for the birth of a baby, the whole of creation groaning together, suffering together the pains of labor, the sufferings that will not even compare to the glory about to be revealed to us. But here's the thing. Birthing a baby is hard work. You don't just lie down and hope that the baby gets born. It requires much more active participation than that. That was definitely the case in Mary's time, when she would have been lucky to have 1 or 2 local midwives at her side and not much else. But that beautiful baby would be born thanks to Mary's heroic efforts, exhausted though she was from the journey. And that is what hope looks like. What is the thing you most hope for these days? And what are you willing to do to birth it? I don't expect it will be easy, but I do think that God gives us the resources to support our hopes and our dreams. And those resources include what Mary had, a story, a very old story about God's promises being revealed through God's people, of which she was one. And we are too. If we are willing, God can reveal wonderful things through us also. Sometimes small things, but even small things can grow into bigger things. Isn't that the promise of a baby? The hope that was born in Bethlehem, of all places, and all because of a harsh decree from Rome. So in a sense, Rome is the place to look for hope, because when we see what we want to change, hope grows inside us like a baby waiting to be born in the right time and place. Where is Rome for you? It might be the headquarters of the corporation that owns your local grocery store, where they actually set the prices you pay. It might be Moscow, where a modern-day Caesar is making decrees to expand his empire with impacts all around the world. It might be the county seat or state capital, where codes are set that determine the quality of the infrastructure we use. Rome refers to the places where power is brokered, for better or for worse. Good things can come from these places, but so can bad. Sometimes we have the agency to impact what happens, and sometimes we don't. But always we have hope, because even if we can't stop the harm, we can be part of the healing. My great-grandparents did not have the ability to stop Russia from imposing unbearable changes on their beloved home country of Finland, but they did not give up hope for a better life. Their hope led them forward like a steady light through the darkness of an ocean crossing and the hardships they met in a strange new country. Their hope led them to create a new home and start a new family, one little baby at a time. And their hope and their faith led them to do as much good as they could to help other immigrants like them who needed to hear the hopeful old story in the strange new place. You see, my great-grandfather in this story helped start a Finnish church where he himself became a lay minister, holding up the light of hope for other Finnish immigrants. They hoped for a future they could not imagine, the future of their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren and great-great-grandchildren. They could not fix St. Petersburg, and they couldn't go back home, but they could pour love and hope into the new home they were making for all of us. I have never been to St. Petersburg, but if I ever do go there, I'm going to find a chapel and light a candle for hope and for my life, which oddly enough I owe to a scoundrel of a Russian emperor, because that is how hope works. It glows one small light at a time in dark places as we remember the old, old story. Wherever there is suffering or pain, loss or longing, there is hope, which shows up in unexpected ways when we let it. May it ever be so. May your hope go unextinguished, especially during this holy season of Advent. Bless you.